Well, he already told you that I'm going to give a point of view of an educator and a parent. I put 12 children through the public school system, and then I served for 36 years as an educator. And this man is going to be hard to follow. And I hope all of you will. I'm going to trip over something. I already am tripping over. I trip over cracks in the sidewalk, so. This Aaron Osmond, some of you may know that I've written 3 articles in 3 different newspapers in favor of what he's proposing. Not everything he's proposing, but nearly everything, from a parent perspective and an educator's perspective. Just a quick word about Common Core. We have had 2 presidents of the United States who have called a national summit to reform public education. Those 2 presidents invited governors to bring a business executive to Washington, no educators, just bring the business executives and the governors and we will reform public education. Well, out of that came No Child Left Behind, Goals 2000, and Race to the Top. Now we have an education system in Utah that's in the control of the government and the very wealthy people in our country, Gates and Eli Broad and some of those guys. Well, I'm going to run out of time if I don't get to what he asked me to talk about, but I want to start out by calling your attention to a quote that's in your handout. You don't need to look it up now, just think about it. Then you can read the article. The article was in the Ogden Standard Examiner about how we ought to be looking for and developing the genius in our students. Albert Einstein said, every person is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will go its whole life believing it is stupid. Now, what has that got to do with education? Have you thought about how students are judged in our schools and how only 10% get all the A's and B's and the rest go their whole lives believing they're stupid? How does that let me ask all of you, how many of you have gone your whole life believing you are inferior because the state of your education in the public school system only emphasized reading, writing, and arithmetic and 1 or 2 other things? You don't have to raise hand. Quite a few, right? Well, it's happened to me. I did an IQ test going into the Air Force, and I didn't score quite as high as some of my friends, so I started thinking I was stupid. When I went into the Air Force and they said, well, we're going to give you a choice of going to weather school or airplane mechanic school, I was signed up to be a pilot, for pilot training. But it wasn't the IQ that got me out of the pilot training, it was the end of the war. Anyway, I had to tell you that much. The Great Brain Project was invented at Hillfield Elementary School when the teachers decided to hold a different kind of back-to-school night. they said, we don't want to have the parents to come in and we, as teachers, to sit and tell the parent, or stand and tell the parents what we want them to do for their child. We want to have the parents come in and let's have an interview with them one-on-one. We'll ask them 3 questions. Number 1, what would you like the school to help you do for your child? Notice how that was worded. What would you like the school for the parent? I'm losing it. I could tell you a story about that too, but I better not take time for that. What would you like the school to help you do for your child this year? Number 2 question. You don't need to write this down. All you have to do is buy my book. I have it. There's a few copies over there, and here, and it's in there. But the number 2 question was, what are this child's special needs, interests, and abilities that we need to keep in mind? And number 3, how can we work together as a partnership? So that we asked those 3 questions, teachers did, and had those interviews. To make a long story short, there were 3 major things that the parents came up with. Nearly every parent came up with at least 2 of the 3 that I will mention. Number 1, help my child learn to be, to fulfill his importance as a contributor to society by developing his unique talents and gifts. Now, we have a school system that doesn't aim to develop students' unique talents and gifts. We have one that aims to standardize everybody, make them all alike in knowledge and skills. But that's the number 1 thing the parents wanted. Number 2, help my child fall in love with learning. Help him to learn how to ask good questions and really be curious and want to learn. And number 3, the parents wanted the teachers to help my child learn how to get along with others and communicate with them. Those were the 3 major things that they wanted. So we developed an education program called Educating for Human Greatness. We called those 3 things the 3 major qualities of human greatness: identity, inquiry, and interaction. And to make a longer story short, I'm going to have to move into this. The teachers invented some strategies to help students grow in those 3 major dimensions. They invited parents to help them with those strategies. And one of the strategies they invented was called the Great Brain Project, where students were invited to sign up, make an application to be a member of the Great Brain Club, and become a great brain, a specialist, expert, mastermind, or genius in a topic of their choice. It had to be that. Now, we found there some schools perverted that a little bit in teachers, and they assigned kids to do the Great Brain Project. Worst thing you can do is to assign kids to do the Great Brain Project. You don't assign that. You invite them to do the Great Brain Project and to study something they're really interested in. And one little girl, a 5th grader in a private school up in Ogden, developed a Great Brain Project on hummingbirds. She had, in their backyard, they had a little hummingbird feeder, and she got curious about the kinds of hummingbirds that were coming. She noticed they weren't all the same. So she said, I'm going to do a Great Brain Project on hummingbirds. Now, I wish I had what he had up there now, but I want to just show you from a distance and pretend you can see this. She came up with, will you help me? She came up with a list of questions. That's part of the process. Develop a list of questions that you want to learn about your topic, and then add to your list as you dig deeper and deeper into your topic. So this little girl's first question was, how big are hummingbirds? How big are they? This is a 6-year-old, so keep in mind that. And I'd like you to think of something else. Lay it down for just a minute. I'm going to wander back and forth all over. I lost it again. Is that okay? Sir Ken Robinson, how many of you know that name? So I just want to tell his favorite story. A teacher was teaching her second and third graders. And she came to the one little girl and says, Susie, what are you doing? And she said, I'm drawing a picture of God. Teacher said, nobody knows what God looks like. The little girl said, they will in a minute. Now, isn't that fantastic? I tell you that because Sir Ken Robinson is saying we ought to be developing imagination in our schools. And here's a little girl that had an imagination. And in this Great Brain Project, I'd like you to look as we flip through some of these sheets that you can't see and you're pretending you can. The times when this little girl, Lynn, used creativity. When to become a genius level, and you have I think you have a handout in there about how the genius level says we need to be creative with what we know. And so this little girl, she did a Great Brain Project on hummingbirds and achieved at the genius level. She said, how big are hummingbirds? Hummingbirds are the smallest birds in the world. Most are about 9 centimeters long. How about that word for a first grader? Well, anyway, that's another subject. The smallest hummingbird is a Cuban bee. It's a little bigger than a bumblebee. A ruby-throated hummingbird weighs just over 2 grams, which is less than a penny. Let's flip another page. I'm just going to go through a few of her questions. This was only part of her Great Brain presentation. She had charts and posters and pictures all around the room, but this was part of her presentation on hummingbirds. What do hummingbirds look like? And she answers, hummingbirds have bright black eyes. The feathers on hummingbirds flash in the light and change colors. Hummingbirds have long beaks to poke into flowers to get nectar. Okay, let's flip another one. She illustrated that one too. Why are they called hummingbirds? Hummingbirds got their name because their wings say hum, hum. And she's got that written on there. When they zip through the air, they beat their wings 100 times per second. And then she illustrates it. She's got a helicopter here, and then she's got the hummingbirds with how she's drawn their beating their wings. And they can hover when they eat. Okay, let's flip another question. Where do hummingbirds live? Most hummingbirds live in South and Central America. Some live in North America. They don't live any other place in the world. And then she has a chart here to show the areas where the hummingbirds live. In some cases, that would be called a mathematical representation. Okay, let's go. How many kinds of hummingbirds are there? There are about 600 species of hummingbirds. Ruby-throat and broad-tailed hummingbirds are the kind of hummingbirds we see in Utah, she says. Okay, another one. And she draws a picture of it. How fast can hummingbirds fly? Can you think of the process of her questioning that she came up with to really find out about hummingbirds? Hummingbirds can fly backwards and straight up and down. Hummingbirds can go 50 miles an hour. When hummingbirds go south for the winter, they can fly 500 miles without stopping. Some hummingbirds fly over 2,000 miles when they migrate. Okay, she's got a whole bunch more questions, and she's shown some creativity with nearly all of them. I want to flip to the back part, though. Where is it? Bibliography. I thought you'd be interested to know that Lyndon developed a bibliography to tell where she got all of her information. She's got quite a long list of where she got her information about hummingbirds. Okay. That's good on that one. I think I'm going to keep track of how much time we will have now. 20 minutes. The Great Brain Project. I better show these. When a child did a Great Brain Project at the school where I was principal, we made a Great Brain Hall of Fame. And here, we took a picture of the child and then put the name and their topic. And does it show their level? No, not on this one. Some of the Great Brain Hall of Famer listings showed the level: specialist, expert, mastermind, or genius. The Great Brain badges that we made for the kids to wear show they were great brains, and they proudly wore their Great Brain badge. And it told this Jacob White was a great brain on space flight. And Cotton Warren became a mastermind on rocks. So they had badges to wear. And I'll just mention a couple of other projects that stood out. I think I've I mentioned one of them in the article that you have in your packet. One little girl, third grader, composed a song, lyrics and music, that she played on the piano as part of her Great Brain report on dinosaurs. She had a little song that she made up about dinosaurs and had the lyrics and the music. And I'm thinking of another little boy, a first grader, who he was so shy that he almost couldn't stand up in front of an audience. He's kind of like me, I guess. But his mother Oh, and this is part of what I want to tell you. Part of this Great Brain project is that the parent would act as a child's research partner. And if the child couldn't get a parent to help them, they would get an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or a neighbor, somebody to kind of help the child find information and be the child's research partner. I was leading somewhere with that. First, the little girl, oh, the first grade, thank you. Feel free to help me when I lose it. He did a Great Brain project on trucks. Hillfield Elementary School, if you go past it in Clearfield, is just east of the freeway. It sits almost on the freeway. And if you know about that school, I opened that school in 1964 as the first principal. But this little boy noticed all of the many, many different kinds of trucks going by on the freeway. And so he came and did a Great Brain report on trucks. And he brought in to show all of the different models of trucks that he had collected. And a drawing that's almost hard to describe. He did a drawing of an 18-wheeler and labeled every part of that truck. They're just amazing. But like I said, his mother had to stand right by him and kind of support him because he was quite shy. Over in Clearfield High School, how am I doing? We're getting closer? Okay. Oh, we got to allow some time for questions. There was a young man who went around the school all the time with his head down and felt like a nobody. Well, the media center person said, I'm going to help this boy. And so he did. He helped him develop a computer program to show the advantages of using natural gas in an automobile. He did such a good job of it that Mountain Fuel Supply Company, is that the name of the? Questar Gas now, but it used to be called Mountain Fuel Supply Company. Not many of you are old enough to remember that. But they wanted to contract with him to use that program to go around and show it, to show people the advantages of using natural gas in their automobiles. What happened to this boy after he was successful with that? You think he went around the school with his head hung down and afraid to talk to anybody anymore? It changed his personality. He became important. And that's what the Great Brain Project can do. If you find students acting as bullies or wanting to drop out of school, just have the school try to find what they're good at and recognize them for it. Every child can excel in something. Calvin Taylor at the University of Utah a few years ago did studies on creativity, and he found out that there are a lot of people who are highly creative who are not necessarily good academically. In other words, the ABC students, ABE, the high kids that were high with grades were not necessarily the ones that were highly creative. And so he was saying we need to start helping our students in our schools find their creative talents. I could tell a lot more stories about different kids that did amazing great brain projects, but I'm going to stop there and let you ask questions. I guess I have a few more minutes. 6 more minutes. Anybody want to ask me a question?
Well, I just had sort of a little glimmer of a great brain moment. How about if you start talking to Senator Osmond and get these little great brainiacs to write the parameters for the curriculum?
I think you got a yes vote on that. Okay, over here.
I'm wondering when you're giving out those badges and how you work that out, what are the differentiations between novice, specialist, expert, mastermind, and genius? Are you coming up with them?
Oh yeah, I should have told you. I should have given you a handout on that one, but not on how to judge. There's one, I think, appendix. Let me see, where is it? Appendix E in the handbook has a kind of a scale on how you determine whether the student is a specialist, expert, mastermind, or genius. Then if you don't want to buy the book, make sure I got your email address and you ask me for it, and I'll try and send you a copy. Also, in as much as I wrote those 3 articles saying why we need Senator Osmond's plan, if you want, I can send you that material. It gives other reasons than the ones he gave in those 3 articles, and I can refer you to those. Sorry I didn't have a way to put it up like he did, but it looks like I need to develop one of those PowerPoint things.
Lynn,
Yeah.
isn't the difference between those just the level that they take their project?
Yeah, and that's true too. Some of the kids didn't want to go clear up to the genius level. Some of them said, oh, I've learned all I want to know about that. I'll stop at expert or I'll stop at mastermind. And that's up to the child too. Okay.
I have a couple questions. The first one is when there are students that didn't have an interest in anything, how did the teachers or the parents help them find an interest? Everything's boring. That's the first one. The second question I have is, how can parents stimulate more creativity in their kids?
Okay. As soon as it started out kind of slow, but as soon as students started seeing their picture up in the Great Brain Hall of Fame, it started to landslide. It created a lot more interest. Let me emphasize one other thing. I'd like to say that the Great Brain Project was amazing at helping kids learn how to inquire, how to ask great questions. It was also amazing at generating parent support for the school. Whitesides Elementary School in Layton was one of only 7 schools in the district that voted in favor of a school bond election. And I attribute that to how the parents were involved in the school. Another question? Yes.
How do you work on it every day together, and when do you have them do presentations? How did you work that?
It's up to each teacher. They worked it out a little differently. Some teachers would say, well, I'm going to give you some time to go down to the library and work on your Great Brain Project. Others were a little more caught up in the district curriculum and felt like they couldn't allow that. I patted those others on the back for letting their kids go to the library, though, because if a child is looking for answers to his or her own questions, they learn it in a way that is deeper and more longer lasting than if they look up the answer to the teacher's questions. Does that make sense? So a lot of the kids engaged in home study instead of homework. It was self-chosen home study rather than teacher-assigned homework. Question here.
How do you implement that in your school?
How do you get this going in a school? Well, I guess all of you go back to your schools and tell them they ought to get it going, and then invite me to come and tell them. I'll help them in any way I can.
Buy your book.
And buy my book. Yeah, that too. Any more questions?
As you've been doing it, have you found any particular like age groups that where it worked best on? Because obviously you can do this on the whole gamut from probably kindergarten all the way up through even higher education.
Up through high school, the one teacher the media center specialist at Roy High School, got it going there with some of his students, and we had it as young as kindergarten, and we had some kindergarten students. We even had some special ed kids who were in a special ed department that did great brain projects. It's amazing what you can find if you really look for it and try to develop the genius in every person. There is, as Einstein said, genius in every one of us. Some of you may not have discovered your genius yet, but it's there. And let's try to get our schools changed so they will start developing genius. I could say some bad words about Common Core, but I heard that a school board member was going to be here, and so I was a little nervous about doing that. But when the government decides what your child should learn, rather than you and a teacher deciding what your child should learn, it's a totally different ball game. I guess, am I out of time? I don't see any more hands for questions. I want to thank all of you, though, for putting up with me. Thank you.